auction them off.
Okay. Habib, do you? Habib left. Edwards
was close enough that it was okay, but it was 3,000 short of basically what they probably should have easily offered, which we could have offered if we would have taken it down to Florida.
Yeah, Tesla usually doesn't give the best trade-in offer. People usually go to CarMax or some other place. I mean, Tesla would rather avoid, flipping the car for you. But for some of their Tesla vehicles, they do actually put it on their used website. So last time I was complaining about the trade-in value of my Model S, and then they ended up giving me actually $4,000 more than CarMax because it had FSD included, and CarMax didn't really account for that. But most of the time, Tesla's not giving you the best trade-in value, so it's good to check other places.
Hey, Omar, how do I sound?
What'd you say?
Well, that answers the question.
No, there's like a giant helicopter flying over me right now. I don't know what's going on.
They're on to you. They saw the deals that you stole from Tesla, those cheap Teslas you've been buying, and they're like, this guy needs to be locked up. Or cheap shares, let's say. Cheap shares. You're adding shares, right?
Yeah, I am.
All right. Dallas, how are you?
Hey, good, Yaman. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind today?
I guess first and foremost, those two moves out of California to the great state of Texas. I know those aren't Tesla pertinent, but obviously they're Elon pertinent. So,
yeah, let's talk about it. Let's open with that. So XAI is moving to Texas from California, and SpaceX is also moving, right? Who wants to start? Alex, what do you think about this move? Elon is consolidating his companies in Texas. Alex, and then Uzi.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys remember, he had said that, he was going to be like faithful to San Francisco, to California, and they just pushed it so far that, they can't stay there. Like, they can go out of the building because there's drug dealers and drug addicts and violence. It's become untenable. So, and recently the new law Gavin Newsom signed was like the straw that broke the camel's back. So they're gone. And, it's too bad for California, but I think a lot of other companies are going to follow suit. And it's like a blue state exodus. We had Delaware, now California. And yeah, so the money is going into red states. And maybe it'll, shift the power a little bit in the country if tech starts moving to red states. That's what I think.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
You can see at the top of our screens an exchange between Gavin Newsom and Elon Musk. Gavin Newsom copy pasted and posted something that Donald Trump had posted, I believe, on Truth Social about a year ago, if I remember correctly. And
yeah, about.
And then Elon replied to it. This is at the top of our screens, man. It's just amazing to me that on X we get this direct exchange between, very powerful people around the world, and we get to witness it real time. I mean, you look at the millions of views on those posts. It's all happening real time in front of us. This election cycle is unlike any other before. Uzi.
Oh yeah, that was really entertaining. It does seem like that was an impulse decision with Musk. It just reached a threshold. I think the bill itself might relate to Elon's more political motivations. I think it's because of his daughter. And that bill was talking about mental health, I guess, diseases with children. Teachers can't report to parents what's going on with their children in that way. And then maybe it helps with taxes, but I don't, I think it's really a political decision right here.
Edward.
Sorry about that. And I think that, that it's great for Tesla as far as Elon being more in one area, so especially when he doesn't have to travel as much, it's going to be more positive for all the companies because he's not going to be spending a lot of the time in the air or traveling to where he can't really get a lot done necessarily besides maybe tweeting or posting.
Dallas.
Yeah, I think it's a net positive. I'm not sure timeline on how quickly this transition will occur. I mean, that sounds like a little bit of a strategic nightmare, moving an entire company and a lot of staff out of state. But I think if it happens rather quickly, I think it's a good thing. One thing I wanted to mention, I know someone just said something about kind of states, moving to a blue or moving to a red state. I mean, in the past, these things have actually kind of started to transition states into that purple category. So I wouldn't say that, the company's moving to a red state. I think if anything, this stuff kind of turns states a little more purple. So
Yeah, that's fair. There's no way around it because you bring people, but I think it's a good thing that like the power in a country, the economic power gets redistributed more evenly. It balances out the scales, I think.
What do you think? What do you guys think will happen to the Fremont factory in California? Somebody bet me yesterday that Tesla will shut down the next step is that Tesla will shut down the Fremont factory by the end of 2026. I was like, wow, that's an easy coffee. I'll take that.
No, no, no. I think Larry, can't remember his last name. Sweet old guy from the UK. Larry. Anyway,
Goldberg.
Goldberg's. Yeah, sorry. I had so he says like that was the next move, that they would move Fremont, that they would move the Megapack factory in Lathrop, that they would move everything, and I don't think that's correct. Like not at least in a recent future at all. They need that factory. The Tesla factory in Fremont is like the most productive in the US right now. You have Vandenberg Air Force Base that is critical for launches for SpaceX, and the Lathrop factory is brand new. They're not going to dismantle all that and take the hit and to rebuild it somewhere else. So I don't know. I feel there's too much of it. Moving headquarters is fine, and it's relatively easy, but and X is a different thing. They're mostly like software. Already they have like servers outside of California. So yeah, I don't see that move happening.
Omar, what do you think?
About the move yesterday? Well, you know, there's a there's a lot of different angles to it. So, first off, I just think the business climate in Texas is just better, So, it's just a better place to be headquartered. That doesn't necessarily mean you just shut down all the California operations. The California operations will probably continue to expand. In the case of SpaceX, in the case of X, maybe not. They'll maybe just move to Texas entirely. But I had seen a story that they had subleased out their office space in San Francisco quite some time ago. So, like, I think it was like a week ago or so. So I'm not necessarily sure it has to do with this transgender thing. He may have been like kind of trying to make a point there a little bit. Whereas, so San Francisco is actually a really beautiful city. I live there. It's pretty great. But there's really kind of, the downtown area, the Tenderloin and like Market Street and where X office is especially is like horrible. There's like all these people who are just addicted to drugs. The city's giving them more drugs and they're just like zombies. They're like completely out of their mind, just kind of like walking around. So there's one part of the city that's like really messed up, and that's where X headquarters is. And way back in the day, X made a deal with San Francisco to locate their office in that crappy area in exchange for some tax abatement in the city. So it's just a terrible place to have an office, and it's like super overpriced. So them just leasing it out and moving is like, frankly, I'm surprised they lasted that long. And it's not like people really necessarily want to live right there in that area. So I think moving to Austin, Texas is a great move, honestly. It kind of symbolizes Twitter and X's move into the center, right? Rather than being located in San Francisco, it is now located in Austin, which is really a great representation of the center. Not only is it physically in the center of the United States, but it's a liberal city in a red state. So I think it's actually a great home for X. I think the rent's going to be better. I think they'll be able to pay people more because there's less taxes. So that's great. SpaceX, they've got a huge facility in California, their SpaceX rocket factory in Hawthorne. That's not going anywhere. Fremont's not going anywhere. That's the number one, car factory. These things can't be moved that easily. But with Starbase and Starship now reaching orbit, Starbase is the future of the company anyway, right? So moving the headquarters to Texas, it's kind of a symbolic move. But it makes sense. And I think it's going to be beneficial for the company. So I think that's great. Although I love LA and we got the SpaceX headquarters, the former SpaceX headquarters now right here, uh, right where I grew up. It's, probably a better move for the company to be headquartered in Texas long term. So I support that. Then, I think the sort of transgender aspect of it, clearly, I think Elon has been very, um, I don't know what the word is, like very affected emotionally by obviously his child who hates him and is, according to Walter Isaacson's book, a transgender Marxist. He believes like the woke mind virus is making people hate him, even though he's doing good things. That's kind of his view. So I think he's kind of trying to make a point about this. I mean, it kind of strikes me as potentially a little rash. I mean, I think people probably should be notified if their kid is, you know, saying they're a different gender or something. People should know what's going on with their kids. But at the same time, I think if my kid was transgender, I'd probably figure it out. Um, so I don't really know if it's worth moving the company over that personally, but I also don't have kids, so maybe I don't understand. But I think it's just a good move in general to move to Texas anyway. So he may be kind of presenting a little pretense here to make a political point and kind of give the middle finger to California on his way out, but it's generally a pretty good decision. And one more thing, context about that Trump post. That Trump post was made after Elon made comments on X saying, "I don't think Trump should run. I don't think he should be the nominee. We need something new. We need something different." He wasn't a Trump supporter originally. And but then he kind of just looked at it and he said, "Hey, I got two shitty choices. I got to go with the one that's actually going to be better for the things I want to do." And, Mark and Ben from Andreessen Horowitz had a great podcast about this yesterday where they just talked about why they were voting for Trump. And they said, look, we are the number one crypto investor. The Biden administration's been having a war on crypto, and Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC, won't meet with us. Biden won't meet with us. We're really frustrated on this. So we're not voting on immigration or Trump or his character or his felonies or anything. We're just focusing on what's good for our business and our portfolio companies. And that's why we're voting Republican.
Thank you, Omar. Just a quick note. Thank you, Ryan, for encouraging people to like and repost this space. The best way to support this space is through Patreon. The link is in my bio. If you can sign up for Patreon, I would appreciate it. For those of you who enjoy this space every day, a couple times a week, I would encourage signing up for the either $5 just as support for the space or $10 Tesla space. Tesla patrons get the $10 Tesla patrons get weekly Tesla updates of resale values, FSD resale values, inventories by model, and other analysis, like, for example, earnings releases, SEC filings. And every single day, I publish 5 to 10 bullet point summary of the spaces. So if you don't have 2 hours in your day, you can just read the 5 to 10 bullet point summaries, which take about a few minutes, and it covers all the material points that we discussed in the space. If you can't sign up for Patreon, which I understand not everyone has $5, $10 a month to spare, I get that. The second best way to support is to engage with my posts on X. So if you can like, repost, and reply, especially reply to the post, that increases my ad revenue share, which supports this space. This space is only possible because of my patrons and the people who engage with my posts. And I pinned my post at the top of your screens. We're going to get to those questions in this space. Let's continue with Alex, Dallas, and then we're going to change topics.
Yeah, so just to add to what Omar said, like, yeah, I think when Elon took over Twitter and made it X, like he fired a lot of people. So there was a first wave of subleasing on Market Street, that building. And yeah, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, another big chunk was added. So almost like double the space they were subleasing. And so there might have been something that they were thinking about it, but I think the law is not only about like his family. I think Elon is seeing where like the government is trying to step in, like the curriculum in schools that is being taught, and now like they're pushing away the parents out of like some important decision making, or maybe important even knowledge about what's happening with their kids at school. And I think this is where Elon, basically drew the line. That's enough. With everything that's going on, I can't support this. I don't want to be here. And you also vote, you vote in the ballot box, but you also vote with your wallet. And basically moving out of California is saying, yeah, fix your shit, California, because people are not going to stand for that, and we're just taking our money elsewhere.
Okay. Dallas.
I think one thing to note here is like tying back to Omar's point about departing from San Francisco heading to Austin. I know X is a very like non-remote work friendly company. I think it's like a zero tolerance policy for that. So if you work for them, you work in the headquarters, and I think they're going to have a lot better time or a lot better luck getting great talent to the company because Austin's such a desirable place to live. I spend a decent amount of time in Austin, and if I didn't live in Dallas, it'd be Austin, Texas. So I think that's a kind of a hidden positive here that we're going to see down the road.
Edward.
Yeah, I agree with Alex 100% that I think that Elon doesn't want to really be there. I don't think he feels good when he's there. I think his emotional state may be negative constantly when he's there. I think a big part of it is he doesn't want to be in California because of what's going on.
Okay. Let's switch topics. Omar, I was watching one of my daily kind of routines, Autoline daily updates. And at the top of our screens is a 15-second video, 20-second video talking about deflation that's going on in China. Chinese economy is in doldrums. I believe they announced recently some disappointing growth figures. And their banking system is in trouble as well. And this video talks about how the price war that started with Tesla last 2 years ago is now spreading to ICE cars. So not only Tesla resale values, but also other EVs from other automakers, resale values of EVs from other automakers, but now ICE resale values as well, which is in line with what we've been discussing over the last 2 years. That it's going to take time to spread across the industry and across other segments and everything. But now ICE resale values are also plunging in China. And that, Omar, what do you think about this? And do you think we will also see this trend in the US as well?
I do think we're going to see this in the US as well. We're just a little bit earlier on the adoption curve. Now, the situation in China today is obviously unique to what's happening in China. There was, of course, a property bubble for the past several years. Now we have a banking crisis. Generally, there have been some macroeconomic issues that have contributed to this deflationary cycle, which is pretty broad based, commodities, EVs, batteries, you name it. Most of the household wealth in China is in the form of real estate. So this property bubble and the aftermath of it, the COVID lockdowns, it's really just been sort of devastating to the Chinese economy. And you don't hear about it too much because they try and keep it quiet. But you've been seeing the effect on EV sales, for example, and prices spiraling downwards. So it's been a pretty dramatic situation. But you can really look at markets like China and Norway and see the future because they have much higher rates of EV penetration than we do. And what eventually starts to happen is people don't want gas cars anymore. In China now, the cheapest car you can get is an electric car, not a gas car. So it's completely the opposite of the situation here in the US. And what you start to see is eventually demand for cars fall, nobody wants them. The resale value becomes less and less. People stop building new gas stations. Old gas stations eventually start shutting down because they have fewer customers. That makes people want gas cars even less. The prices fall further. And it's just sort of a vicious cycle downwards once it gets started. We haven't really started to see that in the US, but if you just look at the trend of battery cost declines, you look at what's happening in China, and you just carry that over into the US, you're going to see a similar situation where even somebody who loves gas cars will want to buy an EV or use an EV just because it's so much cheaper and better.
Do you think the US has any systemic risk to China today?
Um, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a systemic risk. They're obviously a major trade partner, but it's less now than it has been in previous years. The pandemic and also protectionist policies by both the Trump and Biden administration have made us less interlinked with the Chinese economy than in the past. But there is obviously still a lot of trade. But you've been seeing obviously troubles in China, the property bubble, other sort of deflationary factors for many years now. It's not exactly a new thing. And the US economy has continued to be inflationary and doing pretty well in terms of the labor market and the property market and all those sort of factors. So, it is possible that the deflation in China did help mute inflation here in the US, helping us achieve some of that soft landing. But I haven't done any in depth research to kind of quantify the impact of that.
Well, let's go to our geopolitical expert who sometimes gets up from the right side, sometimes gets up from the wrong side of the bed. So we're about to find out which side of the bed Jimmy the Other woke up today. Jimmy, what do you think about the deflation in China? Do you think it poses a risk, financial risk to the US markets? Go ahead. Oh my God. Can you guys hear him? No. Okay, wrong side. Wrong side of the bed. Anyway, I'm going to use this opportunity to thank Christopher Roberts for tipping on X to support the space. Appreciate it, Christopher. Christopher is also one of my moderators on YouTube Live Chat. He does a great job. All right. Anybody else who would like to comment on deflation in China, slowing growth in China, and a potential risk to the US market? Omar, the 1996 Asian financial crisis had a big impact on the US market. So you don't expect that in at this point. Like, I want to understand one thing I'm going to look into over the coming days and weeks is how does today's relationship between US and China compare to the late 90s? Maybe Yoda might have a comment. Yoda, how are you?
Good, good. Well, I guess, in every conversation about China, I guess there's a little Taiwan in there that's warranted. Yeah, I just sent you guys or just posted that Governor Abbott visited Taiwan on July 7th, met with the president there, President Lai, and they signed this very interesting MOU. It's called an EDSI, I guess, that gives Texas limitless opportunities to collaborate with Taiwan and Texas businesses. And what was number one on that MOU is encouraging investment, trade, and collaboration in areas of semiconductor, electric vehicle, and energy resilience. So that could be storage and generation. But what was interesting is, now that X is moving to Austin, seems like Elon's consolidating to Texas, and that the Texas government are securing chips and compute for all these great businesses coming over. So yeah, just want to share that.
Thank you. In the clip at the top of your screens, at the end, Borderline says that they hear from experts that the price war could go on for 2 to 3 years. Price war could go on for 2 to 3 years. And I'm actually noticing a reacceleration in the decline in the resale values across the board in the last couple of months here. Omar, I'm sure you saw the used Teslas being sold by Hertz for $18,000. Are you jumping out of your seat to grab one of those?
Well, no, I already have 2 Teslas that are great, so I don't need one. But if you want a cheap car to test FSD, if you're like an investor or something, and you can't really justify buying one, it could be a good opportunity. But those cars are horrible. Like, I don't know who rented these things. It's just like, people who don't know how to use a Tesla just destroying these cars. And like the seats are falling apart, and somehow the steering wheel has a piece missing, and somehow the sun visor's gone. And you're like, huh?
Yoda?
Omar, is the Mercedes on the chopping blocks? Why is it even there?
The Mercedes?
Yeah, I think maybe it's your mom's car or something.
Yeah, my mom's Mercedes. I mean, she was driving an E-Class before. So we went to the dealership to get her a new E-Class, and they said, "Hey, you want an EQS? We have like tons of EQSs. We'll give you an EQS for the same price." And they're like, "Okay, yeah, sure, we'll take that." And I was like, "Hey, get her a Model 3 instead." And he's like, "Nah, I'm just gonna get this." And it's cool. We can do some testing with a Legacy Auto EV compare. But it's a decent EV. It is kind of like nicer than the gas car that she had before, but it's kind of hopelessly clunky compared to a Tesla. Even just turning it on, like there's actually a start stop button. So I always get so confused, like getting in and out. How do you turn it on and turn it off? It's always kind of difficult to tell, but yeah, next time we'll probably get her a Tesla.
Omar, I'm trading in my Model 3 Performance in the next couple days for my Cybertruck. What do they do with our vehicles? Do they make money off them? Or are they going to store them and use them as robotaxis?
Well, they'll probably just put it on Tesla's website in the used section if it's a Tesla, and someone else will just buy it. So you can maybe find the listing on the website. They do list the VIN. So you can tweet it out and say, "Hey, here's my car if anyone wants to buy it."
So you think they'll keep it here in Hawaii and resell it here?
I don't know what they do. But they do have some on their website. Some they just sell to others. I mean, it's a car. It's kind of like a commodity to some extent. You just sell it to whoever will give you the best price for it.
Now, do you think that eventually Elon will buy up some of the old cars and use them himself for their fleet?
There's always a constant stream of new cars coming in. People are always trading in new cars, and they're always getting lease returns back. So at the moment they decide they need some cars, those cars are always available to them to tap into. But the volume of cars that are being returned versus the amount of cars they need is far more cars being turned in than they need. So they're selling most of them right now. If in the future at some point they're able to monetize them, then they may choose to keep them instead of selling them if that's more profitable.
Okay, switching topics. Yoda, I want to ask you about NVIDIA. You're an NVIDIA investor. You're also a TSMC investor, and they're having a tough time today. NVIDIA is down 7%. TSM is down also similarly, maybe not as much, but all chip stocks are down. What's your take on the sector today?
My take is I had some Zoom meetings this morning, and I'm buying some TSMC after these meetings. And they're reporting earnings, Q2 earnings tomorrow. The time zone thing is a little bit weird, but yeah, by Friday, you'll see a nice recovery. So I'll be adding more. The way I'll be doing it is shifting from Apple, um, from Apple to TSMC.
Would you be able to give us any highlights without naming names, going into specific details from your Zoom meetings? I know you have connections across the world in the sector. Would appreciate any color to the extent that you can share, and if you can't, I respect that.
No, these Zoom meetings are just my day job Zoom meetings. So they're not related to investment. Very few people actually, yeah, know about that. I have this alter ego on X.
Wonder who that is. Can't figure it out. Just to kind of give a quick overview of the sector, TSMC down 7% today. In the last week, TSMC down 10%. NVIDIA down 13% in the last week. Today, it's down 7%. Actually, let me just see real quick. And then AMD also down double digits. Micron down double digits as well. And ASML down 12% today. Omar, do you think this is the beginning of the end for the semiconductor industry? Thoughts?
No, I mean I think generally we're kind of just getting started. Now the new NVIDIA supercomputer that they've come out with, it's a lot more complex. It requires liquid cooling. It's kind of unclear how long it'll take to scale up. And also, you're continuing to see people chip away at NVIDIA's moat. There's a big target on their head because people are wasting so much money on NVIDIA stuff that they're just dying to find any solution to be able to use the AMD's GPUs, for example. And I saw a new open source project this week that says, hey, we're going to allow you to run CUDA code on AMD GPUs without changing the software. So kind of like a compatibility layer. Now, I'm not sure how well that works or how well they've re-implemented CUDA for other GPUs, but you're seeing slowly people chip away at NVIDIA over time. Overall, I'm continuing to hold it. There's going to be some bumps. I think this is the worst day in quite a while for NVIDIA. But just looking out 10 years from now, do we have a lot more computer or a lot less computer about the same? Probably a lot more. So I'm not getting too worried about any little down day. I'm barely paying attention to that.
Okay, just a quick note again. Thank you, Sierra, for sending a gift on Venmo. I didn't realize you could even send gifts on Venmo. And for supporting this space. Sierra is also a patron and also a regular speaker. And she's welcome to speak again. Uzi.
I think the annualized development schedule might be, what's NVIDIA saving grace with AMD chipping away. But I do think, investing wise, there's two reasons. I mean, first, NVIDIA was sort of driving up the market for like 2 or 3 months, so people were tremendously overweight, and it's somewhat healthy to rebalance portfolios. And then there's also the Trump trade, where people are thinking, oh, Trump will be much harder on China. But Biden is their strategy is to limit NVIDIA compute to China too. So I'm not sure how much that last point has validity in reality.
Omar, are you willing to add more shares to NVIDIA here?
No. I'm buying more shares of Tesla here.
Is that the only stock you're adding to?
No, but I mean, I think Tesla is a $1 trillion company, or it should be right now, based on what I'm seeing. FSD is able to drive for hours through LA without intervention. And I actually tweeted, how is Tesla still under 300, which is around $1 trillion valuation, when FSD can drive for hours hands free through Los Angeles without intervention? And Elon liked that tweet, so I think he agrees too. But I think people are going to be shocked with what happens with Tesla in the coming years. There has just been so much negativity, and I think their future earnings power is really underestimated. Whereas Nvidia, it's kind of a chase thing a little bit, right? I don't like to chase things that are running because there can easily be like a 50% correction or something. So I was buying Nvidia back when everyone was selling it a couple years ago, when the crypto bubble popped, and everyone said, "Ah, Nvidia, a piece of garbage." That's when I was buying it. Then, as it's run up, I mean, it probably would have made sense to buy more shares along the way up, but I try not to chase things. When Tesla was trading at all-time highs, I wasn't trying to buy then and run after it because it's kind of hard to know what the fair price really is long term when you have a sudden revaluation like that. So I could be a buyer of Nvidia again in the future, but I'd want to see a pullback of at least probably sub 100 before I did that.
Sub 100. Okay, let's see. Right now, I think at the top of our screen is the heat map of technology stocks, including the semiconductors. So that's at the top of our screens. It's a bloodbath out there today. Nvidia stock is down 6%. It's at $119 per share. So Omar is looking for about a 15% drop from here to add more to his shares of Nvidia. And D Patel in YouTube live chats, lets me know, and says U.S. chip stocks fell more than 4% on Wednesday after Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump sounded lukewarm about defending Taiwan. Wow. Interesting. Wonder what he actually said. What was the verbatim? Did you hear about that, Omar?
Nah, people usually get carried away with these comments. Oh my God, Trump made some comment. Now we're going to have war with Taiwan. I don't know. People have been talking about this for a long time. This is a decades long conflict. I think that in a Trump presidency, if China did act against Taiwan, the administration would probably provide some type of support because, he's been pretty strong anti China. I think, the government would, the US has obviously long standing relationship with China. But Trump has always kind of had a stance on foreign policy that we shouldn't just hand away money to people. We're not obligated to take care of other countries. We need to take care of ourselves first, right? So he probably just made some comment. Being Trump, I don't think this is going to have a material impact on whether there's going to be a war in Taiwan or not. So it seems to me like maybe a little bit of an overreaction by the market.
Yeah. Sometimes I get slack for allowing politics talk here, but they all tie into each other. We need to understand all Tesla inside, outside, macroeconomics, other technology stocks, semiconductor stocks, and also geopolitics and elections. They all tie into each other. We need to understand it's like, universally, comprehensively in this space. That's the goal of the space. Let's go to the Tesla fanboy.
Okay, just to play devil's advocate on NVIDIA, right? So on 4/30/2023, they did like 7 billion in revenue, right? And then after they released the Hopper, that later, like a year later, on 4/30, they did 26 billion in revenue, which is like 362% increase in revenue year over year. And now they've released Blackwell, or they're about to. And this Blackwell takes up like a quarter of the energy use, and it can do the same thing the Hopper does with a quarter of the GPUs. I don't know. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I don't know if NVIDIA's done for, because Blackwell's going to change the way like data centers run forever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone disputes that GPUs will play a ever increasing role in the world in the future. The question is really about valuation. How much of it is priced in the stock? How much other entrants will take going forward? So, I have a coffee bet with Machine. I don't know if he's here right now, but we bet that SMCI, for example, was going to see all-time highs again this year. And I'm winning that bet so far, but we'll see. By the way, Alex, while casually being on the speaker board, just got a reply from Elon. Alex, do you want to share that?
Oh, sorry, I was replying to somebody, but
Alex,
what's
would you please prioritize a space over
well, I am
others? Thank
paying
you.
attention to what's in the space. I'm typing a post at the same time. I didn't look at my
I'm kidding.
notifications.
I'm kidding. Go ahead.
So
That's
what's
fine.
the thing?
I'm just messing with you. Go ahead. Reply to Elon. I
Well,
understand
no,
it's
it
more
wasn't a reply
important
to
than
Elon.
Tesla
I didn't.
life.
What did he do? He replied to
Yeah.
something.
He replied to you.
Oh, to me.
Yeah, just
Well,
now,
I
2
can't
minutes
find
ago.
it.
He says
It's
yes.
not even in my notifications.
You
I'm
said
not seeing.
Alex said Tesla should be viewed. I mean, that's what happens when he replies. Like, so many people like and reply all of a sudden. It gets kind of.
It's gone.
Yeah, it's gone. Yeah, I'll just pin that stuff so you can find it easier.
Yeah, thanks.
Dallas pinned me on it. He said yes to your post that said Tesla should be viewed mainly as a real world AI company. All right, we have a bear on board. Everybody, be careful. Everybody, caution advised. Bear on board. Bear on board. Magic.
Hey, just wanted to see your guys' views. I know that you didn't really want to talk about politics, but still material. So what your views on the JD Vance VP election? He's anti EV subsidies and he's anti-China. And let me remind everybody here that China's is a substantial profit center for Tesla. So it doesn't seem like he's voting in the interest of Tesla.
All right, we're going to get back to that in a second, but I want to just make a quick point. We have another bear on board, and his name is Machine. And I just want to say that this Machine's mom joke really took a life of its own at this point. It's uncontrollable. Somebody asked a question on Say, and it got upvoted. Machine, did you see this? There's a question on Say by your mom.
I did see this.
It's got like hundreds of millions. It's backed by hundreds of millions of dollars in shares.
Yeah. It's not possible at all that someone could have just edited the text. I'm sure it's real.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at this, 183 votes. This was as of last night. 51,000 Tesla shares represented. The question, very insightful. How was Machine's mom?
I would just say, if indeed 51,000 shares of serious investors actually upvoted this vote, just tells you how incompetent Tesla investors are, which I don't believe. Not for that reason, at least. However,
I want to apologize to you, Machine.
Yeah.
I will never make a mom joke again. This was went too far, I think. So I'm done with that.
I will say, more relevantly, Elon loves to, Alex and his very simplistic Brazilian mind loves to post stupid comments like Tesla should be viewed as an AI company. And of course, Elon, after his steak and egg, very proud that he ate steak and eggs for breakfast, apparently. And he feels great. He doesn't look great, but he feels great. Is posting yes. And then I go look at other quote AI companies. Let's look. Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia. Their PE ratios are like 40. Their forward PE ratios are like 30. Tesla's PE ratio is essentially 100.
Man,
Its
this is so funny. You're like
ratio
accusing Alex
is
for being
80.
simple-minded, and then you're talking about PE ratios.
Well, you guys want to talk about Tesla being viewed as an AI company, and I go look at all these AI companies, and Tesla's valued even more highly than them. So what does that actually mean? Tesla should be viewed as
Like maybe you missed like two words that are critical in what I posted: a real world AI company. That's a big difference.
Why is that? How is it?
You don't know the difference, or
No,
are
I
you
understand
just
the difference. What does it mean in terms of valuation?
Real-world AI company means Optimus, robotaxis. That means your PE ratio does not consider robotaxis and Optimus yet. You know this. I know this. Everyone in this space knows this. Why are you wasting our time? I want to
like,
get back
dude, I
to
apologize to you about mom, and now you're coming at me with like silliness. Like, seriously?
Omar.
I just want to say that I have it on very reliable sources that those people didn't just upvote the question. Every single one of them actually banged Machine's mom.
You see, I'm not even gonna laugh at that.
I'm not laughing. Okay, let's get back to Magic's question. Magic asked about JD Vance. So Trump announced his VP nominee, JD Vance. JD Vance has had, some negative views on EVs in the past, but Uzi lets me know in a reply, and I'll pin this at the top here. JD Vance has had some really, really positive comments about Elon. Uzi, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, there's that small clip, like 20 seconds, where he praises Elon for being like an American entrepreneur of the past, building just what Alex said, real world products. And then I guess part of the FUD is, JD Vance sponsored a bill to take away the EV tax credit and then put it for ICE cars. It died in Congress. So I think that was just a political play, and he likes Elon. And just what Omar was saying yesterday, even if the IRA is removed, it's beneficial for Tesla. So it's really every argument is in favor of Elon right here.
All right, let's get Machine's counterpoint on even if IRA was removed, it's positive for Tesla, and then we're going to go to Omar to explain what Elon meant by that.
Saying removing the IRA is positive for Tesla is like saying that you were happy that you're the last person to fall into the ocean when your cliff gave way. Yeah, you'll do better. Tesla, I fully believe, is in a better position than other EV makers or other OEMs who are making EVs. But if you take away the tax credit and nothing else changes, there will be less overall demand for EVs, including Teslas, and Tesla will have to lower prices and make even less money on their automotive segment. I don't even really understand how that is really debatable. So is it good for Tesla in the long run because other OEMs then wouldn't even go into EVs? Possibly. So long term, it could be better for Tesla because everyone else would just give up. But in the medium term, over the next few years, it would be worse in terms of their earnings. So it's not, there's a little more nuance there.
Omar, can you respond to that? Elon has repeatedly said over the years that if all credits, all subsidies were removed, Tesla's competitive position would improve.
Yeah, so, with the presidential election, it's a little bit like the hotel says, hey, we got we don't have any rooms left. Who do you want to share a hotel room with? Hitler or Dahmer? And you go, gee, I don't really want to share a room with any of them, but if I have to pick, probably Hitler, right? I mean, Hitler didn't eat anybody, as far as I know. So sometimes you just have to make a choice between two bad candidates. And I think the Z boys really summed it up. I mean, the Biden administration, they want to charge Elon with crimes. You know, they want to slow down autopilot and FSD. They want to generally, um, investigate his companies. They are not business friendly compared to these other guys. They're against subsidies by the government, but they don't hate the guy personally. They actually admire what he's doing, building businesses, bringing manufacturing back to the United States. So I think Tesla right now, if you look at the impact of the EV tax credit, has it been a big boost to their profitability? No, their profitability has actually gotten worse. And I think a big part of this is, you have these legacy automakers. $7,500 is a lot of money, right? So these guys are losing boatloads of money on their EVs. The $7,500 tax credit gives them some justification. Okay, we have to have this out because of this. So it brings a lot more crappy EVs to market. And a lot of people have bought those, and it's created a situation where a lot of them have actually gone back to gas. Then the fact that it actually is now given to hybrids, it's actually made EVs less competitive compared to before. And you've seen a surge in hybrid sales. So the fact that government money is being put into, you know, people buying more cars and polluting more is like crazy. That's the opposite of what the law was supposed to intend. Then, the compliance with the IRA adds a huge amount of cost, right? Okay, well, now I can only buy lithium from this country. I can't buy it from that country. Well, that country has it cheaper because everyone's buying from the IRA compliant countries. And then now I'm constantly having to have this public conversation about which batteries are Chinese batteries, and it's making me look bad, even though everything's made in China. And I mean, there's just a huge amount of headache and compliance cost associated with it. It's not necessarily all just going to be repealed because there's someone else in the executive branch. It has to be an act of Congress, of course. But if the subsidies were removed, Tesla would have a stronger comparative advantage compared to some of the unprofitable EV makers. So they would probably take market share away from those people as they tamp down production. As a result, I think you could see them better utilize their capacity just by selling more EVs into the existing market.
Henry is very experienced. Actually, let's go to Machine first, and then Henry. Machine.
This charlatan, Omar, has so many logical twists. He's like a big ass pretzel. He can't find his rear end from his face. This guy last year was telling me not only how much the EV tax credit mattered, but how much it going from a tax credit to a point of sale rebate was going to matter for driving demand. And now he's telling you that it didn't matter at all. This is like Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to the man behind the screen. Of course it matters. It's $7,500 reduction that people get to buy an EV or a hybrid versus a regular gas car. If that goes away and nothing else changes, there will be less demand for those EVs and hybrids because they suddenly cost $7,500 more, which is people are very price sensitive. So everyone stand back from your little Tesla hole, your little EV hole, and just practice some common sense of supply and demand. And yes, will Tesla take more sales maybe from other EV makers? Yeah, at lower prices. So for the CEO of this company, who also has pretzel logic going on, because he's fighting an internal battle within himself, and this is why he's pretty anxious, to where he has his overall economic beliefs, but at the same time wanting to support the acceleration of sustainable transport. And by advocating for the removal of an EV credit, he is slowing down the acceleration of
Is there an
sustainable
end? Is
transport.
there an end to your?
I still spoke less time than Omar.
Yeah, we have 5 hands, and we have people requesting to speak. I'm going to give a chance to Omar, and then Henry Henrock.
Yeah, I think I've been pretty consistent on this. I mean, obviously, a 7,500 incentive is great. I just recently took advantage of it myself for the Model 3 performance. I think smart people did take advantage of it. But I've been pretty critical from the beginning, from the very moment it was proposed, of how this thing was structured, how problematic it is. Having price cuts to qualify, having income limits. It's a big mess. It's a big headache, and it always has been. So, that compared with the fact that it's for plug-in hybrids as well, and the fact that the government is, you know, having this massive deficit, and they're now buying people cars, buying people gas cars. I mean, I think we all just know from the beginning it's wrong, it's unsustainable. So, to the people who are saying, "Oh my god, this is going to be some type of disaster," we can look at, for example, the 2018-2019 phase out of the EV tax credit. I think it's pretty instructive. And what you saw there was a pull forward in demand from Q1 when the tax credit started phasing out to Q4. So pull forward of demand, higher Q4 delivery numbers, big sequential decline into Q1. So there was a very negative market reaction to that. But then what you saw after that is that sales continued to grow, and they continued to grow to much higher numbers even before the EV tax credit returned. So yes, there is maybe a little bit of a hit they take for one quarter, but is it going to stop their long-term growth? I don't think so. And ultimately, it's going to get rid of a lot of headaches. Things like price caps. Hey, you can't price it under, your car can only be this price, which just suffocates you more and more as inflation increases. All these battery sourcing requirements, it's adding a lot of cost in there. It may seem like 7,500, but you really need to look at the 7,500, average that over how many customers really qualify, and then also look at the cost of complying with the regulation, which is probably adding thousands of dollars to the battery and vehicle.
Henry Henrock.
Hey, Yaman, thanks. Yeah, I believe that that the IRA was a net positive from a growth rate perspective to hybrids over EVs. And yeah, I mean, and if you get rid of it, um, that doesn't mean that you're getting rid of all the state and local subsidies. So the only one, so EVs would still have some subsidies in the U.S. and hybrids would no longer, because I'm not really aware of all the subsidies that exist in every state, but I don't recall any of them qualifying hybrids for their local state subsidies.
Thank you. Magic.
Hey, so Omar pointed out that Elon feels politically persecuted and he's really worried. I've said multiple times on this space that there's a DOJ investigation and everybody brushed it off and laughed. It appears like Elon is taking it pretty seriously, since he's advocating for the conservative side, which is objectively very bad for EVs. So it seems like he's sacrificing Tesla investors to protect his own self-interest. That's how we see it.
What's his self-interest exactly? What are you talking about?
He's buying political power to get a pardon in the future for the crimes he has committed. There's no way out. He is trying to buy his freedom in the future.
Omar. Man, those are big claims, Magic. Those are big claims.
It's all the same.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the DOJ has a case here, which is why they haven't indicted him yet. I think if they had anything, they would have loved to indict him. It would have been great going into the election. Now, with the way things are right now, the political climate, given the perceived political persecution of Trump, his attempted assassination, the perceived, going after people who are opposing the party, it's going to be very difficult politically for them to indict him before the election, even if they really did believe there was a crime. And frankly, a jury would never convict Musk. They just have a very hard time with it. Now, assuming Trump wins in the election, there's no chance. Elon could shoot someone in the face, so to speak, or shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, to borrow Trump's phrase. Not actually shoot somebody, but I'm talking about in like a business sense. And they're not going to prosecute him for it. So I think this has really been a central point of Grant's thesis, that there would be some huge regulatory action against Tesla and Elon Musk. If there is a Trump presidency, I really don't see that happening. It seems like a very low probability.
Shane.
I come in here and try to make reality-based arguments, not over the top. And sometimes people call me a bear. Sometimes people call me a bull. And in this case, people seem
No one ever calls you a bull. I don't think I've ever heard that before.
How many times have I been all in on this stock, including in 2023? And now I make some points that I'm saying maybe it's overvalued a bit. And then in comes these other bears with their price targets of like $20, and that Elon's protecting himself from fraud and legal treatment. And I'm just like, and you're putting me in the same basket as them? This is insulting.
You are your own basket case. Says the fanboy.
Why did you go all in if you thought it was overvalued? Thanks.
Well, situations change over time. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but number one, Tesla in 2019 was in a fundamentally different space than now. And even in 2023, when it sold off to $100, and it was still actually making more money per quarter than it is today. And I thought there would be a significant rebound. And by the summer 2023, I realized, the stock had gone up to, well, all the way up to 290, but like in the 260s, kind of similar today. And I'm like, wow, actually earnings are going to keep going down. This thing is not staying at this share price. So that's when I sold off, and I've been in and out since. And right now, I think it's on the higher end for a bit. It'll correct down. And when it corrects down to maybe $200, a bit under, I'll probably put a significant amount back in, but not at this price. Not right now.
Okay.
Don't companies have good and bad years?
Yeah, of course. I created a poll in YouTube live chat based on Machine's discussion just now. Do you believe Tesla is undervalued, fairly valued, or overvalued? There are three options. You can select from that if you're on YouTube live chat. Let's go to Magic and then Omar.
Hey, yeah. So Omar said that Elon cannot be prosecuted under a Trump administration, which I would tend to agree with. And that's really the premise, is saying that why would he go out and endorse a candidate where it's obviously not great for EVs? How many Democrats versus conservatives buy EVs? I think the last stat I looked at is about 70% roughly, but it's overwhelmingly Democrats buy EVs over conservatives. And not only that, I don't know what the political views of the CEO of Ford and GM. There's a reason people don't do this. So he's very outwardly spoken, saying that he's supporting a candidate. So we're saying that the reason that we're looking at is we're saying, hey, well, it doesn't align with Tesla's business interests, his association with Trump. It makes more sense that he's trying to avoid prosecution. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be prosecuted or not, but it seems like he is worried about that a lot more than protecting the interests of Tesla shareholders. And I think everybody here, as a Tesla shareholder, should take note.
Okay, Omar?
Yeah, I don't think he's worried about being prosecuted. I think he is worried about getting to Mars. And he's worried about scaling autonomy worldwide. And he looks at the Biden administration. He says, these guys hate me. They are slowing me down in doing these things. It would be better to have a different administration. And, you know, he has made a decision. He's been very vocal about it. So I don't think it's necessarily about prosecution. That's kind of the bearish spin on it. It's just really about he has beef with the current administration. Now, they've been looking for something, anything to charge him with. They haven't been successful so far. I don't believe they could be successful in convicting him of any crime. Um, I'm not aware of any crime that he's committed. So I think this is just a fantasy of the Bears that is just getting more and more laughable as we see how the political climate is turning. I mean, this is Elon Musk. If the guy in the White House goes against him, he will put a different guy in the White House. Okay? Nobody's going to try and mess with him after this. They've learned their lesson. They're going to keep their mouth shut. They'll attack a different billionaire, one who's not fucking insane, and he'll, tweet nonstop about what's going, any, for until the election. And then, the other point I had on machines, saying Tesla was overvalued is Tesla is one of the greatest cash producing machines ever. People love Tesla. People love to buy all their products. They'll buy it. They'll put $1,000 down before they've even seen it. They put a new Tesla butt plug in the merch store. It'll be sold out within 5 minutes. Okay. Anything. Tesla beer,
Don't
boom. Whatever.
don't give him
Now,
no ideas there.
now we've been in this environment where we've seen the fastest pace of rate increases ever. We've seen at the same time an unprecedented slowdown in China, a major EV market, and we've also seen trouble and war in Europe all at the same time. And everybody's gone and said, oh, Tesla's this horrible business. Earnings are terrible. Margins are contracting. When a large part of it was just due to the unwinding of the pandemic, is how I would summarize it. This unprecedented event and the unwinding of the pandemic. And we're starting to get on the other side of that now. Futures markets are now pricing in 100% chance of a rate cut in September. Now, that strikes me as a little high. I don't think it's 100%. But I think the futures markets are listening to the Fed closely, and that's what they're thinking. Printer is coming. And as it does, we will once again see the true earnings power of Tesla. They have tightened their belt. They've gotten humble. They've cut costs, and they've put out the best set of products that they've ever had. And going into the next few years, I think we will rediscover what a cash generating machine this company is, what a growth machine this company is, and realize a lot of the people who criticize them for having earnings contract due to this factor or that, Elon's tweets, whatever, will realize that it was really just a product of auto supply returning to the market. And in order to keep production at the volumes it was during the pandemic, with all the other supply returning, a contraction of earnings and margins was inevitable.
Machine, then humanities, then wiggle.
For the first time, I just realized why Elon wants to go to Mars so badly, and that's to avoid fraud charges. And
See, I told you, you are in the same bucket as Magic.
And secondly, to go back to a point Omar made earlier, which I can't believe none of us addressed, and which I believe he invigorated Godwin's law by bringing up Hitler and Nazis. And I think insinuating that Trump was related to Hitler and that Biden is like Jeffrey Dahmer. Listen, just because Biden has mouth agape, a rigid stare to the distance, does not mean he's salivating over your body and your flesh, Omar. Okay. And lastly, my mom just bought all the Tesla butt plugs out of the store.
Oh, I lost the order. Humanities wiggle that wave.
Yeah, it's hard to follow. So I have a serious question here. It's I follow China quite closely, and I'm watching their autonomous vehicles driving around, and I'm seeing the unemployment that's occurring of 7 million people that have had their wages drop 50% or more. I'm seeing the turmoil that's creating. I'm wondering what is the plan in America for the disruption that this is all going to cause? AI, robots, robotaxi. There's going to be an enormous amount of economic disruption, and do we have a plan in place to deal with this? Because I'll just stop there. I don't want to say what I think is going to happen because it's not good. But what's the plan for that?
We'll get back to that question. I'll give, and then let's get Wiggle and then Waves. Wave has been waiting for a while.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I was just curious for like when, like if the $7,500 tax credit goes away and it becomes more difficult for manufacturers, for other manufacturers to compete, wouldn't it create a demand pressure on Tesla in terms of manufacturing capacity, as there will be less EVs made by others? And how would Tesla approach that crisis?
Okay, Wave and then Omar.
Hi guys. On the what Elon has always said is he's not for subsidies across the board. Fossil fuel has reached peak of 7 trillion and it's continuing to go up. So I think when he talked about IRA, he made it contingent that fossil fuel subsidies go away, not on its own. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Hey, Omar.
So here's what's going to happen from a practical perspective. And remember, of course, that the United States is only a third of Tesla's global sales. But if people believe that Trump's elected, or if he has been elected in November, they'll go out and they'll buy EVs. They'll bring up their purchases to claim the tax credit. There'll start to be news stories about how Trump's going to take the tax credit away, go and run and claim it. So you'll see a little bit of a bump in sales maybe in Q4 and Q1. Then, assuming that Trump actually makes it into the White House, you would need to see legislative action to repeal the IRA. And that's going to be decided by Congress ultimately, not the executive branch. So there's a lot of different provisions in the IRA. A lot of them benefit red states. Like, for example, the battery manufacturing credits, they benefit a lot of factories that are being built in red states because of these credits. So these guys are going to advocate for it to be there. Elon has the ear. He can, call him and say, hey, remember me? I supported you, gave him money, whatever. He can hopefully help color the policy that gets set. So it's not really clear, what they would do, if anything, right? I think it's pretty safe to assume they would try and repeal it. But you'd probably see a little bit of a pull forward. And then what happens afterwards is not necessarily set in stone. They've made comments, but we'd have to see how and when that actually happened.
Machine, we have some feedback for you in the replies. David Cohen says, sometimes I feel like I'm back in college with you guys. Go ahead. What do you have to say for yourself?
I mean, thank you. That's a compliment. Because
actually, I left the last for that. He says hilarious.
People in college, high school, those were fun times. You weren't worried and stressed out about
fun times, yeah.
Trying to get to Mars, try to prove a point online. We're just interacting with people in real life. And I know none of you have any real life friends, so I'm trying to provide you something to live for.
You playing sports in college?
A lot.
That's a no.
It,
That's like a no.
pick up basketball by that time.
Of course, pick up basketball. That's not. Oh my god. I used to wear a shirt in high school. It says something like, if swimming was easy, they would call it basketball. Anyway, let's go to Henry. Henry has a question about Optimus.
Hey guys, so how do you foresee the deployment of Optimus? Do you see it as primarily in factories, or would you see it in like society almost integrated into that?
Yeah, I think Tesla is going. Tesla already said they're going to start with testing and developing Optimus internally in its own factories. We have our Optimus expert machine on board too. Machine, you still believe, if I remember correctly, that Optimus will generate the first $1 billion before robotaxis. When do you think Tesla will have thousands of Optimus in its factories?
2026.
You think it's going to be Fremont or Giga Texas first?
That's a good question.
I
Maybe
always
Fremont.
have good questions. All my questions are
because it's more of their developmental lines are there.
See, you and I are the only people who think it's Fremont.
I don't believe. No, I don't believe. I believe the mass volume production of Optimus will be in Austin, but I believe the first deployment of Optimus to be used in the factory is more likely to be in Fremont.
That's what I said, but nobody agrees with us. Literally everyone on board and in the space thinks Texas. Because I asked this question. The reason why I know this is because it's one of my questions that I ask every day or daily. I ask about 5-10 questions to generate some engagement and get some insight into how people are thinking about these things. And almost everyone said Giga Texas.
Well,
let's go to Alex.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like 2026, Elon said at the shareholder meeting, it would be 2025. By the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, Optimus would be in the factory. In the 1,000, he said.
Elon also says we're going to have AGI by next year as well.
All right. He also said that the final version of Optimus is close to getting ready. Do you think he's making that up?
That's his goal. He's usually a little optimistic, so probably somewhere in between. They may actually achieve that.
I'll say 2025. And honestly, like Fremont, Texas, I think maybe Texas. Just to,
definitely
say the opposite of machine.
I mean, have you guys seen Texas? They have so much space there. It's just so massive. They have room to do anything they want there.
The problem is that if it's in Texas, then you have to deal with Texans who aren't really open to diverse creative thinking. They're really just a set of workers on a line, just yes men.
Not in Austin. Austin is very different from the rest of Texas. Austin is very much California, except minus the taxes.
So insulting.
Minus the taxes. And also at the top of our screens is the question from last week: where will Tesla build Optimus? If you go through the replies, you will see pretty much everyone said Texas. Texas, except Penny. Penny said they will replace cars in Fremont with bots. Machine, if Tesla was indeed starting the first 1,000 Optimus in Fremont, what line would they get rid of? Because Fremont is packed in the gills, right? Packed to the gills.
I don't know. I don't know how they're going to deploy Optimus. I don't envision them taking over an entire line. I envision them taking over specific jobs across all lines, jobs that are maybe a little more dangerous or causing a little more risk to workers that aren't necessarily that complex. So I'm not sure how that stacks up to just take over one line and other lines be totally untouched by Optimus. I imagine them just kind of being spread out. And I just imagine happening in Fremont first because they have maybe lower volume lines like the S and X where maybe you can put them in without too much cost destruction, potentially if there's a stoppage or other risk factors. Whereas I imagine everything in Austin being very high volume and labor is cheaper and just not going to be as risky. It's too risky there to put them in right away. So, and it's closer to their R&D, the actual real engineers, the smart ones who, obviously smart enough to stay in California, enjoy the nice weather. Those smart ones are the ones who are actually dealing with the robots and training them and all that and getting the feedback. They're not in Texas. The ones in Texas are fat on eating McDonald's and stuck in their air conditioning houses.
Not true. Dude, you are so off. You clearly have never been to Austin. Austin is full of people who are super fit. And I mean, when I moved down there, I'm like, man, I got to hit the gym here if I'm going to be on a dating scene every single day. Robert Scoble just replied to the question at the top, but I don't see him in the audience, which means he is here anonymously. So he's welcome to come to speaker board or just hang out in listener mode. You don't have to be anonymous. But we have Sierra on the board right now. Sierra, what do you think? Can you speak some sense into machine?
About the shape of the people in Austin, I don't know. They are all pretty active people. Everywhere you go in Austin, you see people riding bikes and doing cardio despite the despicable heat. But I'm with both of you on, I think Optimus will be rolled out in Fremont first because the team building Optimus is in Palo Alto. So it makes sense that they would be in close proximity to the team working on Optimus.
There's a fanboy. Looks like the speaker board agrees it's going to be Texas, except actually we have divided speaker board right now. Omar and Alex think it's going to be Texas. Machine, me, and Sierra think it's going to be Fremont. Let's hear from the others. Tesla fanboy?
I think he's thinking of Houston that has Dr. Nalzardi and all the 600-pound people.
I'm not going to alienate my listeners from Houston, but I'm just going to say every city in Texas is very, very different from each other. Dallas, Houston, Austin, even San Antonio. Like even if you go out to like a few miles outside of Austin, it's very different. But downtown Austin, California minus Texas. Wiggle, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with. I think that mass manufacturing will be in Texas, but like the initial prototypical set, like the prototypical line, will likely be in California.
Okay, great. We have JC on board. JC, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to defend Texas.
What I've heard is that they're moving the headquarters to Porter, Texas, just about 5 miles north of me. Everybody's fit. Hey, I will say that's a joke, obviously. One thing I'll respond to the whole thing about Elon endorsing Trump is that, I live in pretty rural East Texas, and I can't tell you, I live in Trump country. It is like they think of Dan Crenshaw as being a liberal here. So that's kind of the area I live. I can't tell you how many family members and friends reached out to me and said, I may buy a Tesla just because of this. And I swear some of them are like, I see all these Teslas in Houston and Austin where people are putting these bumper stickers on about, I bought this before I knew he was crazy. And I'm going to watch my language here, Yaman, I know. But they said, I'll put a sticker on there saying I bought this because of that crazy MFer.
JC, you can use whatever word you want in the space. The last time you dropped an F-bomb, you tipped like pretty big. Machine.
Appreciate
and
that,
then
yeah.
Wiggle.
I am actually curious how many Tesla followers have had their politics sort of identification changed over time via viewing their experiences following this company. Because I believe, I believe that's happened to some people. I mean, it's happened to me, but it's not really because of Tesla. But I have followed, the media FUD on Tesla for so many years. It definitely made me a lot more skeptical to trusting media in general. But I think that a lot of people, follow principles that Elon follows, and they've kind of transitioned as he has. Maybe transition was not the right word to use in these times.
There you go.
Yeah, so with Elon moving X and SpaceX headquarters out of California, do you see him moving other establishments like divisions and R&D, or even Fremont out of California?
Omar?
Yeah, Fremont can't be moved that easily. You can't just pack it into a suitcase and, hey, let's go put it over there. It's kind of stuck where it is. There's a lot of big machines and people and supply chains all built around it being there. So it'll probably stay there
Sorry, can anyone hear me
for.
this time? Hello?
Yeah, Omar, the other thing I want to ask you about is in the context of politics that are ongoing on that pinned at the top of the exchange between Gavin Newsom and Elon. We also have Tesla also has its Megapack factory over there too. So in terms of gross profits between Fremont and the Megapack factory, that's a big chunk. Machine, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think he's changing the headquarters of all these places. He's not fundamentally shifting major parts of the company to Texas. It's more symbolic than anything else. Although, obviously, they are going to add more and more of the business when they grow into Texas and other markets. They're not going to massively grow in California over other opportunities. However, from a technical expertise standpoint, they do need to get the best engineers and scientists for these companies, and a lot of them, and software developers, and a lot of them are in California. So you're going to have a substantial, presence in California no matter what. So I just think they'll focus on growing the other areas as much as they can in freer markets that aren't trying to control ever nitty gritty detail. But for him as a billionaire, I mean, it totally makes sense to move. I mean, California, God, I know you don't want me to rant, but liberals, I'm all over the place, right? I don't classify as, like with Tesla, I don't classify any one group, but liberals in there trying to penalize people is so toxic. To just like I just want to tax people more just to penalize them, or I just want to do this to this group to penalize them. They're doing too well, like Asian Americans in schools. So no, we're gonna have a quota on you. Like, just stop. It's disgusting.
Humanities, did you get a response to your question earlier?
No, it was a big question, and maybe it's
Can
off
you ask it
topic.
again?
Yeah, I follow China closely, and they have 7 million cab drivers that have had their income cut in half, and they're about ready to start rioting and doing worse things. And I'm wondering, with the disruption, the economic disruption that's going to take place with the AI, Optimus, the Robotaxi, is there a plan for that? I mean, there has to be a plan for that, or you're going to have a lot of very angry Americans.
I mean, you might be overestimating how quickly this is going to happen.
Yeah, perhaps, but if Robotaxi comes out in 2026, let's say it's the end of 2026, what's the plan for all of these people that are going to have their income drastically cut?
Well, let me ask you this: when do you think Tesla will have 1 million robotaxis on the roads?
Sometime in 2026, end of 26, a million. It depends on if you're talking about automatically classifying existing vehicles that are capable of doing so, then
Well,
yeah,
that's part of the question.
2026. Okay,
That's
then
part of the question.
2026.
So you
Yep.
think that's going to happen because machine disagrees with you?
Well, okay. I think it's going to be 2026. I think FSD is coming along amazingly well. I think it's really, really close. And I understand the complexity. I was in software for doing it for 40 years, but it is so close. You can just see it.
Machine.
It is so not close. It is so close to being really great. It is still 100x at least away in reliability until it's good enough for robotaxis. And that's just talking about the software, assuming nothing about what the hardware requirements are. And then on top of that, something we never even talk about is the actual physical hardware and infrastructure needed for actual robotaxis to operate, like cleaning, these are dumb things like self-cleaning lenses and all this stuff to make sure that the hardware operates like a robotaxi reliably. None of the fleet produced today have that. And you could argue, oh yeah, we could go retrofit them and all that. But this just becomes a mess. And this is why this idea that the current fleet is really going to be the major part of the robotaxi network, I think is very a risky proposition. And I think it's safer to just go forward thinking that the actual robotaxi produced vehicles that they're going to unveil is the main revenue generator for robotaxis.
Yeah, I have to admit, you make a very good point on this, on the cleansing of the lenses and such.
Omar.
Yeah, I mean, as usual, machines just making ridiculous arguments. Of course, it needs to get 100 times more reliable, but the last update just improved it 10x. If they can just do that a few more times, they're going to get there. Okay. So, I mean, just try the latest update for yourself, upgrade to hardware 3. And, the idea that we need self cleaning lenses, Waymo's operating, and they don't have any self cleaning lenses or self cleaning LiDAR. They just go back to the depot every few hours and they charge and they get cleaned. They clean the inside, they clean the outside, they clean the lenses. So, a car wash is not a new concept here. Oh my God, how are we going to wash the car? Well, go to the car wash. And I think then on the other hand, really getting back to humanity's question about China. So, first of all, there is no widespread unemployment caused by robotaxis in China right now. The Chinese robotaxi deployments that exist are fairly limited. A lot of them still have human drivers supervising, and it's really just a few areas of a few cities. Okay. So even if robotaxis were perfect and no one wanted a human driver, you as a human driver could just go to the city nearby where there's no robotaxis and you'd be fine. So the idea that robotaxis are driving unemployment in China is not the case yet. Rather, macroeconomic factors in China, I think, are causing economic unrest, not robotaxis. Now, long term, like, what do we do? People will figure it out. They'll do something else. They'll have better jobs and make more money, right? I mean, you look at ChatGPT, right? Everyone said, oh my God, it's going to take people's jobs. Well, a lot of people probably didn't get hired, where someone just used ChatGPT instead to design an image or, you know, make a document or whatever. People responded, yeah, some people were hurt. They figured out new things to do. Ultimately, our society got more efficient. We've seen this since the beginning of the industrial age with automation. People always worried, oh my God, what are people going to do? People always found something else to do. So this is really a political question. How do you manage, making sure everybody's okay, that they're able to transition to a new job, whatever. Um, it's not really, I think, a technology question. But when you look at history, society has always benefited from automation, and predictions that there would be mass unrest and riots have rarely failed to materialize.
Machine.
I think I, like most rational people in here, are taken aback by this claim by Omar that the last update 10x the reliability. Sir, where did you get data from supporting that any version has 10x the reliability of a previous version?
Like, where are you getting the 100x that it needs to improve?
We're going to get back to that in a second. Yoda, then we go.
Yeah, I think to humanity's questions, you can abstract everyone who is currently a taxi driver, Uber driver, as accidentally uh, out there creating and collecting training data for the AI product that is autonomous driving. And so once their jobs are displaced over time, and we can argue about how long that's going to take, one opportunity for them is they will be migrated to other tasks that the bots can't do. And essentially their efforts will be training the bots to overtake that task and on and on.
We go.
Yeah, also to add on to that, to humanity's question, when bank machines came in, everyone thought it would be the end of banking tellers, but they just became more efficient. Humans always find something to do and create new opportunities. And in terms of taxis, there's a similar parallel. When Uber disrupted traditional taxis, we had like a few protests where cab drivers came out on the streets and even kicked a few Uber cars, but nothing, it was a transition and everyone just found new avenues to make money.
Machine, can you answer Alex's question? Where do you get the idea that Tesla FSD has to improve 100x to become Robotaxi?
Sure. Human drivers, on average, are able to drive over 100,000 miles before they have an accident. And if we look at critical disengagements, which are not the same thing as accidents, but they're going to be related. We don't know exactly what that scaling factor is, but if I estimate even that it's 50%, 30%, then Tesla needs to get to 30 to 50,000 miles per critical disengagement to have a software that's competent enough to probably drive similar to a human, let alone, it has to go higher to be better than a human. And so that's, let's say 50,000 miles per critical disengagement. And right now, the data is saying in aggregate, not in specific areas, we're at maybe a few hundred miles per critical disengagement. And so let's say we're at 300, then that's still over 100x to get to 30,000, and even more, 150x to get to, say, 50,000. And then you could quibble, well, do we have to get to that high before you have some sort of assistance, remote assistance to help you? And I agree, there's things that you can get around to help around the edges. Like, you probably don't have to start your Robotaxi network. You don't have to wait until the entire fleet across the US is operating at that level. There'll be some geographic areas that can reach that level earlier than others. There'll be assistive technologies for like remote monitoring, kind of like what Waymo does. They could probably help you before you get there. But ultimately, to have a sustainable fleet that can operate profitably, that's kind of the level we need to get to. And we're at about 300 right now.
Okay, but I totally get, and it's like your reasoning is fine. I'm just saying that the improvement of a software does not necessarily equate in like one for one to an improvement in disengagement or collisions or whatever you want to, use as a metric. Because of course, any collision in a human-driven car should have been considered as a disengagement, right? But that doesn't mean that, if let's say the average is like one collision every like 50,000 miles, if I get twice as better as a driver, does that mean that I'll have like one collision every 100,000 miles? Or maybe I'll go to a one collision every like 200,000 miles if I'm twice as bad. What I mean is like my performance is not necessarily linked to the collisions per miles. You get what I'm saying, Machine?
Somewhat. I mean, there are other performance metrics that matter other than collision. And so I think we would both agree that FSD V12 is significantly better than V11 or V10, even though if you looked at these raw miles per critical disengagement, they haven't gone up even 10x. So we would both agree, well, listen, that metric did not go up 10x, but the software got vastly superior. So there are indeed other important variables for performance. However, this metric is still a minimum criteria. You can provide a whole other suite of metrics that FSD has improved vastly at, and yet still, for it to be a robotaxi, it's going to have to get to that level.
Yes,
So,
but I'm saying like the step change, because when we talk, you're talking like 2 orders of magnitude, 100x. It's a big round number. If you improve anything by 100x, like it's really hard, like to find things that improve that much, right?
well, yes, welcome to my world.
Yes, but I
Congratulations.
mean,
It
like
is very hard.
if I start like, if I'm a crappy, I don't know, piano player, if I get how many X's of improvement do I need to like play piano for an orchestra like professionally? Like, is it 100x? I don't think so.
Well, I'm glad. I think you're on the edge now of realizing my world, which is, gee, this is. I mean, how much do you expect this thing to improve? Like this thing's improving like crazy, and you think 100x is asking a lot. I'm not asking for it. This is what is required for robotaxis, and I agree. It's a daunting process, and that's why you get into. I've studied this, scaling laws and all that, and I understand because I do machine learning, the relative importance of model size, data, and training, and know if someone asks me, hey, can you get some stupid model, can you get it to be 100x better? I'd be like, oh my god, are you kidding? Like the amount of work to do that is intimidating. So I do believe they will get there eventually, but again, it's about time frame and it's about model size and amount of data. It's not a simple thing that's going to happen overnight.
Thanks, Machine. I don't want to hog the Yvonne, so if you want to move to somebody else, I could talk about this like for hours.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
Omar, go ahead.
So, there's publicly available data on Waymo's rate of miles per intervention. So Waymo's test fleet has about 18,000 miles per intervention, and their autonomous fleet has about 80,000 miles per intervention. So it turns out that's really all you need. Now, Tesla FSD right now, in terms of what's on my car, is already doing 500 to 1,000 miles per intervention by my measurement. So it's getting pretty good. And a lot of people confuse what's released compared to what's on the edge of Tesla's capabilities, right? So internally, they have things they haven't released, such as, for example, cars with much more inference compute, cars that are running much larger models than they've released before. That obviously requires a lot more inference compute to run. They have cars that have LiDAR on them that are scanning and collecting ground truth data to train the pure vision system. But they also have models that incorporate that LiDAR data, and they actually aren't just blindly saying, hey, LiDAR sucks. They're actually testing it out and seeing, okay, how much would it improve it compared to what the pure vision system can do itself? So there's all kinds of things that they have at the edge. Their capability is probably even, greater than 1,000 internally, but of course it's impossible for me to know. So, really we'll say they're at 500 to 1,000 today. They need to get to 18,000 really to start testing. They need as little as, a 20x improvement in miles per intervention to get there. And of course, you have to do an apples to apples comparison. The miles per intervention figure we see for Tesla is a nationwide figure, whereas this is really within a small area that they're focused on. So if you were to train a model to hyper focus on one area, you could probably get even better performance than the nationwide released version. So I think they're actually decently close. How long it'll take them to get there, we'll have to see. But there's no doubt that the model's improving rapidly. The amount of compute they have is increasing rapidly. The amount of training data they have is increasing rapidly. They're now starting to use the hardware 4 camera, the higher resolution, train a model that's 5 times larger. There's a lot of technical factors I see in there that make me believe we should continue to see miles per intervention shoot up. And I expect them to actually leapfrog Waymo in performance and leapfrog human drivers much sooner than people expect. I mean, I tagged you in a little video, 2 hours of driving around Los Angeles, no interventions. And I think it could have gone much longer before a safety critical intervention was required. So it's getting really, really good.
We have a number of hands on the speaker board right now. This is a hot debated topic. If you'd like to share your opinion, you may do so in a reply at the top of your screens. Replies to my questions support this space because they generate ad revenue. Thank you very much, everybody. Let's go to Andre Danyoda.
Hey, Evan. One thing I want to add is that a lot of people have actually not heard in the discussions is that if there's any indication that robotaxis will become available within the year when they start being manufactured, is going to be heavily supply constrained. So Tesla will be won't be able to outproduce the demand that's going to come in, because there will be a lot of capital investors that will say, hey, look, if we're seeing a clear path and clear indications that within the year all these regulatory and stuff gets approved, they'll put money in and they'll push regulations themselves. So I'm not saying that will happen, but I haven't heard that being discussed, that there will be heavy buying and speculative buying in anticipation of all this happening even a year ahead. So FSD doesn't have to, on the day manufacturing starts, have to support robotaxis. They have to support it within the year to get all this buying. What do you guys think?
Yoda.
Oh, sorry, I have a question for Machine, so I'll wait.
Omar, would you like to answer Andre's question?
What exactly was the question?
What do you guys think of in terms of like the fact that robotaxis will be bought way ahead of regulatory and full FSD driving support for it, like the possibility of that happening? So basically, Tesla not being able to meet all the demand of that.
Well, the better the software gets, the more people I think will want it. I think you're going to see sales rise. I think you're probably already seeing sales rise a little bit and resale values rise a little bit. And that's only going to continue to increase. But it's obviously speculative to say how and when that happens. It's kind of like inflation expectations. Like inflation expectations can manifest in inflation. Robotaxi expectations. It doesn't matter if it is actually robotaxi capable yet. If people believe that it's going to become a robotaxi, and more people are starting to believe based on what they're seeing, then they're going to start to prepare for it. And I mean, the software is getting so good, it's going beyond the limits of human comprehension, right? So when you get above, 1,000 miles where you're only having an intervention every month, almost every drive you're doing is zero intervention. So the rate of improvement, like you're not really perceiving it because it's mostly just working, right? It's still not good enough, but it's rare. And it keeps improving so fast that by the time you get to 1,000 miles, it's now probably, 10,000 miles. You may never see an intervention again at this point, especially if you're only doing short 5-10 minute drives around town. So at that point, it'll really, I think, start to become easy to believe when people see their car operating driverlessly in a parking lot and pulling up to them in a crowded Costco parking lot, taking them all the way home and then parking in their garage. Even if it still requires supervision, yeah, I do think people will start to figure out that it's on the verge of being driverless.
Yoda.
Yeah, two questions for Machine. Machine, as you know, I'm very old and very patient, so I'm not gonna nickel and dime you on interventions count per how many miles. I don't care. I can wait. My question for you is, do you think on this road to autonomy, which you believe is the end state, will the progress for Tesla on this road be linear in terms of progress, diminishing return, that sort of curve, flattening curve, or an S curve? And my follow-up question is on the road to autonomy, however long that takes, 5, 10 years in your eyes, do you think there will be many competitors, or is this kind of like Tesla, the lead, and maybe there's a second? Thank you.
I think it's a very highly likely an S curve, where right now we might be in the steepest part of the curve. And I don't know exactly where we are, but at some point, I believe we could start learning more quickly a bit in the next year, over the next year, but then it'll start slowing down for multiple reasons. And that's just the way these models go. And then to your second question, I don't think fundamentally there's really many competitors who have all the resources needed to solve this problem, like Tesla. Obviously, Waymo's different. Their approach is different, but still somewhat successful. And I see they could get something working in many urban environments, urban cities in the US, maybe over 4 or 5 years, but certainly not the entire geographic landscape of the US. And so they could still be a competitor. I don't really see it in terms of their ability to scale, but they have the ML chops. And then there's Mobileye, who does have a lot of hardware on different cars and coming up with new iterations, which could do something similar to Tesla, but they're going to have more latency and delays because they have to interact with various OEMs, and their ability to pull out data is much less. So, other OEMs, I just don't see anyone who has the sort of integrated environment to do all this. And these other players like Wave don't really have any data, and you can't rely fully on simulation. So I believe Tesla is the best advantage. I just believe the time frame is longer than people think.
Humanities.
Yeah, what do we need to see out of 12.5 to say we are mathematically on track to be ready for 2026 or whatever date that is? What are we expecting to see out of 12.5?
Machine.
We need to see a clear 10x improvement in miles per critical disengagement this year, for sure, to expect something by 2026.
Dave, you have to unmute yourself.
Hi, just wanted to give you quickly my experience with full self-driving. I've been one of the earlier beta testers, so I've had it for maybe 5 years now. It's been quite a while. I think it's going to take a lot longer to do full self-driving, and I think it's going to be bifurcated. So yes, I hear a lot of very positive things coming out of LA and San Francisco. I think it's a Waymo type of situation where it's able to overtrain for very specific areas. I've driven it in extensively in multiple cities and find that some of the problems actually is not software related. So like when we talk about full self-driving, there are things that my car actually used to handle better because it did have LiDAR. It's one of the earlier cars before they turned it off, and it actually could handle really bad storms. Today, you know, if there's even a light storm, it has a lot of trouble seeing through the rain. So there is going to be some challenges there. You know, if you have storms, you know, yesterday, you know, it was trying to turn off my turn signal, even though I was in a turn lane. So it didn't even understand basic navigation on the street in Miami. You know, and definitely has trouble in multi-level parking lots and stuff like that. So there are a lot of things that I think will make it difficult for, you know, universal full self-driving. But in terms of robotaxi, it's a different problem. It's a lesser problem. It's the San Francisco or Arizona or, you know, LA, that it can overfit to one area and do a better job in a very specific area, versus having it universal for everybody. So I do think there is, robotaxi might actually advance faster than full self-driving to the general populace. So just my thoughts. And by the way, I am a big bull of Tesla and a big fan of Musk, but I am very cautious about the timeline for full self-driving.
Okay, thank you, Dave. All right, I pinned at the top of your screens a simple question. And this question is also on YouTube live chat as a poll. What year will Tesla launch robotaxis? What year will Tesla launch robotaxis? I would like everyone in the space to go up to the tweet at the top and reply with 1 year. Okay. Poll options on YouTube live chat are 2024, 2025, 2026, or 2027 plus. And we're going to go around. We have 10 minutes left in the space. We're going to go around, and everyone, please give your estimates. Let's start with Omar.
Yeah, I'll go with 2026, just if I had to give a guess. But also, I think that it's definitely not the case that it just works in one area. I mean, this is the most widespread geographic area of any self-driving system. People are having zero intervention drives in Texas, in Moldova. You are not seeing that from any other system. So many different cities, even so many different countries where it's able to work pretty well.
Alex.
Sorry, I was working on content. My bad.
What's your answer to the question at the top? What year will Tesla launch robotaxis? And I see people are pouring with replies. I love this.
What
Thank
do
you
you
very
mean
much,
by
everybody.
launching? Define launching
Start,
robotaxis.
begin, launch.
No. But like, like nationwide, like one location.
We can't do one location.
One ride.
The
Let's
first
say hundreds
fully
of rides.
autonomous ride in a robotaxi.
Not one ride. Hundreds or thousands. Like, let's say thousands of rides. Okay.
The first of thousands. Like, when is the first one happening? Let me think a little bit.
Okay, Yoda.
Is it just a year? Just give a year?
Yeah, just a year.
2026. 2026.
Reply to the space. I mean, reply to the tweet.
Okay, give me a sec.
Yoda. Andre.
Manufacturing, first half of 2025. Small cities or small towns, like very tiny towns, some of them will pop up somewhere in the mid 2025. Actual, what we all talk about, real manageable, probably start towards end of 2025, start of 2026.
Thank you. We go.
Yeah, I think 2025, given they launch in Vegas Loop, which is a simple enough FSD case, and it has a less safety critical environment. So I think if that considers to be an option, that would be 2025, otherwise 2026.
Okay. Sierra?
I think late 2026.
Thank you. Yoda?
Do you guys think Elon is sleeping at the wheel? It's going to be 2024 for the first ever ride.
Yoda with the
Everybody,
optimism.
yeah, everybody's a little too optimistic. I mean, it's getting really good, but it's not going to give a robotaxi ride today. And I don't see it happening in 6 months. In 18 months, maybe it starts to enter the realm of possibility, but not in 1 month and not in 6 months.
Andre?
If Yoda says, like, basically for the event, the conference, having some kind of shuttling of robotaxis in a pre-trained area, that definitely could happen. Yeah, for sure. I just meant like actual service, probably 2025. But yeah, Yoda, you do have a point. The very first rides will be in 2024.
Well, we're
probably
talking
after that.
at least hundreds of rides, like 1,000 rides. Thousands, like
I
not
mean,
one ride where it's like controlled and filmed and planned path where Elon's. It's like we're not talking about the first one. That is meaningless. Okay, they can demonstrate whatever. We're talking hundreds of commercial paid rides, and I really appreciate people replying to the tweet at the top. We already have more than 70 replies. Let's see if we can get to more than 100 replies before the end of the space. Let's go to Alejandro.
Yeah, well, now you give a little bit more context because I was thinking if it's considered robotaxi with with a driver in it,
No,
Waymo did at some
robotaxi
point,
means driverless. Robotaxi
completely
means
driverless.
robot taxi, completely driverless. Nobody in the
Well,
driver's
yeah.
seat.
Then in my case, I would say towards the end of 25.
Okay.
That's it.
Humanities?
2026 for sure.
2026 for
Sticking
sure.
with it. Yep, sticking with it. I think there's going to be an iterative process that has to take place. So it may be late in 2025, but I think they're going to have to iterate, and it's going to happen in 26. There you go.
All right, Alex.
Yes.
You said give me a moment. So what's your answer?
I posted it. You told me to post it, so I posted it.
Okay.
It's up
All
there,
right.
2026.
Okay, perfect.
By the way, 2026 would be 10 years after they first started. So the people who predicted it would take 10 years were about right.
All right, did everyone give their view? All right, perfect. We're going to end it here. We're going to start a couple minutes early today. I'm going to post a summary to patrons. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining today. And thank you, everybody who replied to the tweet at the top and those of you who liked and reposted it. This could actually be the most popular question, and I love that. Thank you. I love the participation from the audience, and thank you to all my speakers. I will chat with you tomorrow. Take care.